know better than you do on what carries the attention of 30,000 individuals, okay? Please stop. Like, this already is close to the boundaries of what is allowed on this broadcast. We've probably passed that boundary from my own estimation, okay?
They react to 2008, slash the interest rate. How did they react to COVID, slash the interest rate? How did they react to the inflationary spike after COVID? Rocket the interest rate up. This is basically where our economists sit at the moment, which is the way to deal with any economic crisis is to manipulate the interest rate. So the interest rate is like their key tool that they use, basically. And yet, what are their predictions for their own interest rate like? So I was a freshman interest rate trader from 2008 until 2014. In 2008, after the financial crisis, interest rates were slashed to zero in basically the whole of the rich world. Nobody predicted that. That was a surprise. And because they believe that low interest rates are very economically stimulative, they thought that rates would come up again the next year. They didn't. They then said in 2009, well, we're wrong this year, but rates will come up next year. They didn't. In 2010, they said rates go up in 2011. They didn't. And they continued to predict rates to go up every single year up until 2020, in the middle of COVID. Every single one of those predictions were incorrect. And then they finally said in the midst of COVID, now inflation is so low and will stay so low for so long, interest rates will never go up again. And interest rates immediately went up to 5-6%. So, I know when I come out and say inequality is the big thing, and you live in a world full of economists that say, oh, the problem is things to do with the interest rate, things to do with levels of government spending, things to do with levels of taxation, I can sound like a bit of a quack, basically. Why is this guy saying the problem is one thing when all of these prestigious elite economists aren't mentioning it? Well, they're an educational system which never talks about it, and their predictions are constantly wrong. Whereas if you look at my predictions and,
The same goes for foreign policy as well. If you're a constant naysayer of like American imperialism, the one time where your prediction might be incorrect, maybe let's say you're Noam Chomsky and you talked about the Khmer Rouge and said, hold on, let's wait for official data to come out. They'll constantly bring that up 60 years later, okay? Or let's say you're a dumbass Twitch streamer who said, Russia would never invade Ukraine. They'll constantly bring that up. You can be wrong all the time, on the other hand, as long as you are wrong alongside a pro-American imperialist position. The one time where you're wrong, on the other hand, against the American imperialist position, everyone will constantly look to that and constantly point to that to try and fucking undermine your very accurate assessment of the situation time and time again. Look no further than every single pro-Israel content creator, okay? Look no further than every single pro-Israel content creator. Every step of the way, pro-Israeli accounts that are in legacy publishers or that are in independent media have been wrong on every account. Their assessment was incorrect. Their analysis was totally wrong. And every single thing that they said about the potential, about the future of this conflict was incredibly wrong. I, on the other hand, was right every step of the way. And it's not because I have some crazy fucking future sight or whatever. It's because I was looking at previous actions. But it does not matter that they were wrong every step of the way, because they were wrong in the correct way. Okay? That's it. They were wrong in a way where it corresponded to the overall biases that a lot of other people are being socially conditioned into believing. Okay? That's it. The reason why I brought up this analogy, which is somewhat self-serving, is because the same thing happens in the field of economics. Okay? Gotta call this white guy wrong in our post-DEI? What are you talking about? Okay, man, calm down. Take an hour off, Take a breather. The point is, economists are wrong all the time. They're wrong so consistently, but they're wrong within the confines of permissible, the permissible concepts. They're wrong within the confines of, they're wrong in favor of being pro-capitalism. And if you're wrong when you're pro-capitalism, then that's fine. It's, some people get stuff wrong all the time. They're a part of the in-group. Okay? That's it.
I correctly predicted interest rates after the 2008 crisis, but I've also correctly predicted things on this channel. If you go back and look at the first video on this channel, which we'll link in the description, I predicted in the beginning of COVID there would be an inflationary crisis, cost of living crisis, a huge spike in the stock price, the gold price, house prices, and a huge increase in inequality.
I'll give you one example, okay? Famines under socialist developing nations that want to abide by a socialist model are considered death campaigns directly caused to kill as many people as possible, okay? Regardless of what the material conditions in that country looks like, regardless of famines being a widespread problem at that point in time all around the globe, okay? It's never simply mismanagement. Although we have an abundance of food now with technological improvements, okay, there are still 14 million people that die due to famine-related issues every single year under a global capitalist structure. But why do those people die? It's not because of the system. It's not because of mismanagement when we have abundance. It's actually the individual's fault. Okay? Even when famine is man-made, deliberately created to kill people, with the intent to kill people, if it is done by a capitalist superpower, then it's still not the same degree of immorality that is mismanagement under a socialist form of governance. Okay? Okay, it's not 14 million, it's 9 million every year now. My apologies. Well, at least in 2021 it was. In World of Wealth, 9 million people die every year from hunger. Okay? So what else is wrong? Science, history, academic fields filled with the smartest people in the world who have dedicated millions of hours to studying it. You sound like a right-winger denying experts. Wait, what? Brother, this is one field, and I'm saying that we have a dogmatic approach. There are alternative models out there, and we purposefully refuse to look at it out of the fear that it would undermine the current order of business in a way that is not dissimilar to previous dogmatic approaches to ways of thinking that we now understand is wrong. There's someone who is, there are a lot of powerful individuals who are slated to make money this way. They do not want to disrupt the existing hierarchy. The fastest growth in history of humanity were Soviet Union and China. Sorry, chatters, these are just facts. I mean, it's true. I'm also using analogies that pertain to your modern day existence that you can look at, because inequality exists everywhere. Okay? That's why I use the example of the neighborhood in West Virginia versus neighborhood in Connecticut. I'm using analogies that you can also comprehend. You can extrapolate from the existing inequality that you can see with your own two eyes, or inequality that you have experienced, okay, that you have lived through, and then look at a global paradigm, because it works in a similar capacity.
All these things have happened. So I know it's easy to dismiss somebody, especially somebody who doesn't come from a rich, privileged background, saying the elites are wrong on this. But the elites are continually generating incorrect predictions. And I'm generating correct predictions here. So I think that what we have at the moment is essentially a broken education system in economics. But there's more to it than that. And the second reason why we don't speak about inequality in economics enough is because we have a system which aggressively takes anybody who is good at predictions out of the conversation. And to explain this, I want you to put yourself in the mind of a young 20, 21-year-old economic student loves economics, loves the maths, studying at loads at an elite university. You graduate, whatever it is, magna cum laude or whatever. You're top of your class, and then you have to decide what you want to do with your life. So if you want to be in this conversation, if you want to be an academic, or if you want to be advisor to government, or if you want to work in public policy, you have to stay in academia. You can't just do an undergrad. You're going to have to do a master's. It's going to cost you a lot of money. You're going to do a PhD. You're going to have to work, spend money, locked in libraries. If you're lucky, you might start making money in your mid-30s. Or
9 million people dying out of 8 billion is nothing. If we're being nitpicky, is crazy, dude. It's not 9 million people dying because famine is still obviously fucking widespread and a problem that we haven't solved. It's 9 million people dying from hunger out of 8 billion at a time of abundance. Okay? This cannot be seen as anything but an act of sheer cruelty. The only problem here is that it is not profitable. Okay? It's simply not profitable. That's it. It's a logistics problem. That's a crazy way to approach 9 million people dying every year. That's incredible. If you can cast aside 9 million people dying every year, then honestly, you can agree to a lot of stuff, A post-Keynesian Marxist-leaning economist was said to be wrong about sellers' inflation where prices rise because of short-term profit-seeking. What if we're thinking about inflation all wrong? Isabella Weber's heterodox ideas about government price controls are transforming policy in the United States and across Europe. Your window is closing. No, it's not. You've read your last free article, you freeloader. 8 billion people don't die every year. Wait, what? Yeah, they don't. I agree. The entire population of the planet don't die every year. You've read your last free article, bucko.
Or you can go into the city. Not only does it pay you way, way, way more, but it gives you the opportunity to prove, look, I'm good because I can make predictions. And academia doesn't really care if you can make good predictions. So one thing which was really clear to me in my time in the city and my time in academia is if you're really, really good, you want to be in the city. Because if you're making good predictions, you will be recognized, you'll be paid, and everybody will know that is the guy over there who is right, because they're really aggressively analyzing who is the guy who's making good predictions. They're tracking that and they're paying that.
But if the field of economics is so bad and gets everything wrong, then why do corporations and institutions crave elite economists so much? Wait, what? Dude, I don't think you understand. They are operating within the confines of the pre-existing system. Yes. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. That's the entire point of his video, by the way. Like, you misunderstood the entire point of the video from an econ expert, by the way. This is a person who does have the qualifications that you demand. And your reaction to this, your immediate antagonistic reaction to this is ironically the point that he's also making, which is that any kind of heterodox thinking is immediately cast aside by those who have obviously sunk a lot of time into thinking this way, and even those who have sunk no time into this way, but have basically decided through all of the social conditioning that this is the best possible fucking way of going forward. That's it. Also, I think you're mistaken like economists for, quants or like actual math majors who I think even have a more soulless approach to the process somehow.
Whereas when I went back to academia in 2017, I had, my first lecture at Oxford, and it was about interest rates. And I thought, this is really interesting, right? This is the thing which we've predicted really badly for 10, 15 years. This is the specific area I worked in. This is the area I'm an expert on. It's really interesting, right? If you are at elite university and you're studying something really important, and we've been wrong about it for at that time it was 10 years, now it's more like 15 years. This is interesting, right? This is kind of an unsolved problem. If there's a thing that we're really bad at, we can work out why we're bad at it. So I went to the professor, I said, why do you think we've been wrong about interest rates for 10 years? And he said, no, we always knew interest rates would stay zero, which is, categorically wrong. And I went back and I showed him the data and I said, look, you've actually been wrong for 10 years. And he said, oh, that's interesting. It never went anywhere. So what this shows is, if you're good at predicting, which means you're good at working out why other people are wrong, the city will pay you. Academia won't even notice. It won't even notice. So what does this tell you about academia's ability to improve? If these guys are able to be wrong year after year after year after year for 10 years and not even notice, they're not going to improve. They're not going to improve, basically. So what you have is a situation where anyone who is good and wants to make money is aggressively paid to leave. And if you're good and you stay, even if you are able to correctly identify an area where everyone is consistently wrong, they don't really care and they're not going to listen. So what kind of person stays in academia when they know that if they're good, they will do much better and get paid much better leaving academia and going into finance? Basically, people from rich families. It doesn't make sense to do that if you're not from a rich family. If you have the option, I made millions of pounds in the city, and that is what paid for this flat. And when my brother needed to buy a house, I helped him. My sister's trying to buy a house, I'm helping her. People from ordinary families cannot afford to make that choice if they're good. So the kind of people who stay in academia, you need to be either not good enough to get into finance, from a rich family, or basically a little bit mad. And this is what happens. And
Gary's great, but his takes can be quite liberal. It's not like if we just got good economists to work with the government, then suddenly capitalism would be just fine. The system is far more self-replicating at a structural level to be changed in that way. I don't even know if he's actually saying that. Yeah, I think given that there is some level of math involved in economics, I think one of the most damaging aspects of that has been this false reality that they also mistake economics with hard science when it's very clearly not. That's it. People are like, well, it's confusing and it has math, so it must be a hard science. I don't really understand. Based on what he's saying about not needing / wanting to improve, it sounds like the idea that people not wanting to return to shopping carts, there's no reward for returning one, but what? It's neoliberalism that started pushing its view of the economy as some objective truth. Before that, it was way more diverse and everyone understood that it's mostly social science.
You have this system which kind of brainwashes people into saying inequality doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. Doesn't listen to people who are right and have who are demonstrably better in their predictions, and aggressively takes everybody who's half good out of the conversation.
I think one of the classic things that Noam Chomsky has talked about in terms of the field of economics being designed around a lie is the notion of the rational actor principle, when there is a multi-billion-dollar industry dedicated to making irrational choices, making consumers engage in irrational choices to begin with. That in and of itself is a fairly simple way to attack the argument.
You go into finance. Obviously, then once you're in finance, you can make a lot of money making good predictions, but you're not allowed to speak publicly. So when I was a trader, I was making a lot of money betting that inequality would devastate living standards and keep interest rates low and push house prices up and push stock prices up and push inequality up further. But I wasn't allowed to say anything about these things. I had another point which I need to make on this. So the third reason economists don't talk about inequality is that pretty much all powerful, influential economists are quite rich. They're quite rich, they're generally from rich families. If they weren't from rich families, they probably wouldn't have stayed in academia. Economics has the worst social representation of different social classes of any subject in the big American universities. So you have rich people who've gone in to study this subject. They probably don't need money, otherwise they would have gone into finance. And then they get paid to work for a think tank or work for a newspaper, and they themselves are quite rich and comfortable. The people who pay them are probably quite rich. They're heavily incentivized not to talk about inequality, right? It's in a quite obvious way, which is when somebody is rich and comfortable, they want to keep things the way they are. You know, when you talk about a crisis of inequality, it hurts most people quite badly because wealth tends to concentrate at the very top. But there's a sort of, you know, the top 1%, especially top 0.1%, does really, really well. But there's like 5 or 6% at the top that benefit from that. And these guys include basically any economist with a voice. So economists are wealthy. They don't want to talk about inequality. They've got a massive amount of skin in the game saying that inequality doesn't matter. 20 years, 30 years of education studying something which has nothing to say about inequality. They need this to not be a problem. Okay, so to conclude, why do economists not talk about inequality? Primarily, it comes from an education system which completely neglects to discuss it, which means that anyone who is involved in this discussion has studied for 20 years without ever talking about this. So it basically indoctrinates them into believing this is not a problem. And also they have a massive incentive in pushing that, because otherwise their education is a waste of time. It's rich people, it works for them and their class interests. Anyone who is really good at this is paid out of the game and paid to keep their mouth shut. So basically they're not going to fix this. So what does that mean? I'm filming this video at the back end of 2024. We had an election this year in the UK where the centre-left Labour Party beat the centre-right Conservative Party. And I think people often think that the reason that politicians do nothing about inequality is because they're representing their own interests. It's important to recognise there's kind of this whole class of slightly self-serving, slightly idiotic, very posh, very rich economists that are holding this up. And they're going to do nothing about inequality. Inequality will get worse and worse. Living standards for ordinary people will fall. And these people are not going to stop it. So the responsibility has to fall upon ordinary people themselves to stop it. When I first started talking about these things publicly in 2020, I was writing articles for newspapers. I wrote an article for The Guardian. And those articles are mainly being read by quite posh, quite privileged, quite rich people. And I was convinced that we were not going to get positive change by talking to the group of people who benefit from the growth in inequality. So I made consciously the switch to YouTube to try to convince ordinary people they need to do something. And that's why we're doing this channel. So I would encourage people to support, keep watching these videos. I think the next video we will do on this will be a little bit talking about my personal experience and how I came to become convinced that inequality was the problem. And then we'll keep doing.
I don't get all the Trump hate. I think his hair is pretty cool. Don't worry, we're going to get back to the Trump slop in a second. I just wanted to take this brief sidestep, but well, here is Tom Homan, the grotesque and certainly not corrupt New York Mayor Eric Adams. What's very funny is my first stream was a debate with a former mod of yours on the $15 minimum wage. He argued that it was economically illiterate. I responded by citing an economic study that won the Nobel Prize in economics 2 years later, showing increased minimum wages do not cause job loss as normal economics believed. Yeah. Yeah, inevitably those models also find a way. It's just that it's too late and most people just avoid looking at that even when it's too late. All right. Let's get to Tom Homan. As you guys know, Eric Adams, Erik Turanoğlu, okay? Erik Adamoğlu, a Turkish national, was popped by the Southern District of New York for doing a quid pro quo, pay-for-play scheme, and offering benefits to the Turkish government by envoys for getting cheap or subsidized first-class tickets from Turkish Airlines and also hotels in Istanbul. The New York of America, Istanbul. Okay? Now, Eric Adams, being the corrupt cop that he is, was experiencing a little bit of scrutiny from the federal, or at least state law enforcement apparatus. But thank God for him, Donald Trump, the Great White Hope, came in And that man knows the art of the deal. And forced the Department of Justice to drop the case on Eric Adams for his loyal cooperation with the administration's anti-immigrant agenda. Now, they kept saying it's not because Eric Adams is going to play ball with ICE in the sanctuary city of New York and allow ICE to basically cooperate with local law enforcement in direct violation of pre-existing laws in New York State. That's certainly not the reason, except here is Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, doing a morning show on Fox on how they're cooperating with the Trump administration.
It has been a very busy week.
The government is Turkifying at an alarming rate.
For New York City Mayor Eric Adams, the Department of Justice earlier this week dropped corruption charges against him. And yesterday, he met with border czar Tom Homan about the next steps in fighting New York City's migrant crisis.
How'd it go? Well, Mayor Adams and Tom Homan join us right now. Guys, great to see you.
Great
Morning
to see you.
together.
Thank you so much.
Make some news. Mr. Mayor, from your perspective, how did this meeting go? Why was it necessary?
Good. I think that, and Tom could speak for himself, I think he had a real level of frustration, and he was trying to figure out, hey, what's going on, Eric, what is happening? And we were able to get in the room and really articulate what are my powers, what are my authorities, and what are some of the things that we need to legislatively address that is preventing us from doing what we want to do, and that is getting dangerous people off our streets.
Right. And Tom Homan, as you know, Mayor, a couple days ago said he was angry at you in New York City because it sounds like last time you guys got together over at Gracie Mansion, you probably said some stuff. Maybe we'd like to do this and that. And I think Mr. Homan, and Tom, you could start with this. You were frustrated that he wasn't doing enough. He wasn't keeping up his end of the deal.
Well, look, you know, I've been on the network for 4 years, and I've called the mayor out many times for not stepping up when it comes to public safety threats. But I tell you, when I sat down with him, I saw the cop in him. And he really does want to do the right thing because he is a cop. He's a lifelong cop. And so he wants to help take public safety threats.
Like, this is automatically bad for me. But in the bizarro world of Fox, when this monstrous piece of shit refers to corrupt cop Mayor Eric Adams as he's got that cop in him, it's seen as a overall positive. Good stuff. Future of the Democratic Party, according to Matt Iglesias, boys.
Off the streets in New York, making New York safer. He also wants to help find these missing children. We got 300,000 missing children. That many of them are here in this city. We know that. We got to find them, and we'll be working with his intelligence division, his officers, to save these children because many of these children are in forced sex trafficking, many are in forced labor. We need to save them, and I think everybody can agree to that. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on.
Yeah, and, you know, people want to hijack this narrative and turn it into a political narrative where we're saying we need to have public safety. I requested the meeting. I reached out to his team and said, we want to sit down. This has been an issue I was talking about before the election. Spring of 2022, you look at these quotes over and over again, we need to go after these dangerous people in our street. And now I have someone that understands that narrative, and we are fighting together to get it done.
I know Tom has been on our network so many times saying he felt like ICE's hands were tied under the last administration. You've agreed to sign an executive order to open up an ICE office at Rikers Island so that these dangerous criminals that are here illegally can be deported. Tell the folks at home, because they'll hear this, they'll say, oh, they're going to come after me next. You said these are the worst of the worst. So who is at Rikers Island that will be deported? What have they done?
And you bring in 2 points where the far left has hijacked this narrative. ICE is running in our schools. ICE is running in our churches. And they are creating.
Tom's looking at him like, no, we are running in the schools. Don't tell him that.
In this frenzy, they're not in the business of just grabbing children. And we need to,
Yeah, the far left is in the business of saying what Tom Homan has been saying. Like repeating statements by the homunculus standing next to me.
You know, just stop all this noise. Rikers Island, particularly after all the reforms, Rikers Island is now having some of the most dangerous people in our city. And by having ICE on Rikers Island, part of our gang intelligence, using our intel with NYPD correction officers, we could identify those gangs inside and outside on the street. There was no reason they were removed from.
Wow, this is amazing. A former Obama immigration official talking to the Democratic mayor of New York City. Way more Democrats than you see on an MSNBC show. That is kind of true. MSNBC is riddled to the brim with fucking former Bush officials.
On Rikers Island. And as I sat down with Tom earlier, I said that we're going to look at all the legalese. I'm able to do an executive order to put them back on Rikers Island, what they should be with part of our criminal justice apparatus.
You have a left-wing legislature. Everybody knows it. And for some reason, nobody votes in New York, so the same left-wingers get in every time. But if you had your druthers, would New York City be a sanctuary city?
What we will always be. This has always been a city of immigrants.
So you think it should be? Doesn't
No,
it?
let me explain, because this is what's getting conflated all the time. Where the sanctuary city is stated that if you're in this city and you're paying taxes, you should have access to the services. What I asked the city council to do, change the bill that was already in place and modify it, that if you are committing a crime, that we should be able to collaborate with ICE, even on civil enforcement.
Dog, that's literally the opposite of a sanctuary city. That's the whole point. The point of a sanctuary city is that you don't fucking instill fear in the heart of undocumented migrants by saying if they talk to the cops, there is a existing long-standing agreement that they will talk to the ICE officers and therefore they will collaborate with law enforcement. People forget that the sanctuary city process was not designed by the woke radlibs or whatever. It was cops that wanted sanctuary cities. Because whenever crime took place in undocumented neighborhoods, they couldn't prosecute it at all because everyone was understandably worried about talking to police.
If you have committed a crime, that part of the bill is wrong. But everyday people who are here until they're moving to be documented, if they are going to school, working, paying taxes, then they should be able to provide police services, hospital services. Children should go to school. That is what we're saying.
You don't agree with that, Tom?
I don't agree. I think sanctuary is a sanctuary of criminals. But we walked out of the meeting yesterday, and getting back on Rikers Island is a game changer. We can get, not only we...
He's just so horny. He's like, yeah, I don't care. I'll take anything I can get.
Get the bad guys before they hit the street. The intelligence of how the TDA operates, where they're operating, all this intelligence they gather at Rikers Island, we'll have access to. But no, I'm strictly against sanctuary city status just because I think sanctuaries are for criminals.
Right.
And
They're a magnet.
But the beauty here is that we're allowed to disagree. You know?
Right.
But we do agree on the fundamental that no matter who you are, it should be saved. So that's what people are missing. My life is sitting down with people I don't agree with 100% of the time. I don't agree with myself 100% of the time.
I don't agree with myself 100% of the time. He's so awesome. God, I wish he wasn't such a piece of shit. I love, like, that's such a funny fucking line, dude. That's a hilarious thing to say.
But when Tom and I are in a room, we're both saying one thing. No matter who you are, if you're hurting innocent people in this city and in this country, you don't have a right to be in our country.
Well, here's the thing. You can disagree on things, but Tom has made it very clear that if a politician stands in the way of the federal government executing the law, they are going to bring charges against people like you. And in fact, we've seen the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, go after officials already. So was that part of the conversation yesterday?
No, I didn't think it needed to be. I mean, we talked very frankly about, first of all, getting to Rikers Island, step one. That's the first step. We're working on some other things that we don't really want to talk about in open air just because the city council will be putting roadblocks up on us. But the mayor and me have committed to several other things to make this city safer. Further collaboration. Again, city council.
He's such a cock. It's so funny that they can basically sit there and undermine him. Not that he fucking cares personally about like protecting otherwise law-abiding migrants. But it is pretty funny that they can just sit his ass down because he's a criminal, because of his corruption, and just basically make him say whatever he wants, and the cooperative aspects will remain the same.
I don't like him. I think, and Mayor Adams, he's dealing with the sanctuary law, right? That an EO can't override.
Right.
So we're working on some things to work around some of these things. So we can
You're
get some
being
things
careful
done.
the way you describe
We've
it.
been
I've got to be very careful because the
Uh-huh.
city council, they hate me, right? The city council, they don't want immigration
all of them.
enforcement in this city.
Not all of them.
So we got to make sure that we collaborate in a smart way so we can get more bad guys off the street.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And you said something that's very interesting. You said that elected officials who are standing in the way are like me. Let's be clear. I'm not standing in the way. I'm collaborating against so many others that don't want to collaborate.
Well, now you're collaborating.
No, like I said, go back to spring of 2022. I was saying we need to get dangerous people off our streets.
But it wasn't happening.
Amazing. How likely he gets reelected? Oh, no shot. He really just said, let's be clear, I sold out. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that they're bullying him. Like, they're not even... It's pretty funny that they're not even, like, maintaining the aesthetics of Eric Adams doing this from his own personal change of opinion or whatever. They're just straight up like, well, you're kind of forced to do this, huh? You bitch. They're humiliating him. Amazing.
Is that true? We dropped crime in this city at remarkable levels.
Did you help ICE?
In the level of enforcement for criminal actions, yes. The law says, Eric, you cannot do it for civil enforcement. But for criminal actions, yes. The police department.
So what's different then? In this new collaborative agenda then? You just said, you know, we're just working to get the criminals off the streets.
Department, we have increased the number of officers assigned to our task force. Every morning we meet with our HIDA representatives, city, state, and federal level. Public safety, number one. I've always pursued this. Everyone knows that's
now,
where
Mr.
I
Mayor,
stand.
what is City Council, what are they saying about you wanting to change the wording where we could go after the illegals, even if they're paying taxes, if they commit a crime? Because I saw Vicky Palladino. I know she's a New York City Councilwoman. She's a Republican. And then Robert Holden is a moderate Democrat.
Both of them, if you were to talk to them about that change, they would tell you we agree with Eric.
Okay.
But the overwhelming number of council members who have made it clear that they're not going to modify that law. I don't have.
Why? What is their reason? Why would they?
I don't know. Maybe because they understand that New York City is a city entirely comprised of immigrants, and that having a bunch of potato sacks with Gestapo badges running wild in the fucking streets is probably not great for commerce, probably not great for public safety. Why won't they let us hunt down these bad actors.
They protect the criminal.
Well, I think that you look at many of the policies that I put in place. Put in my anti-gun union, 20,000 guns removed off the street. Put in 1,000 cops back.
Oh, they hate that too. Well, don't you think New Yorkers need to defend themselves since you're not doing it, Eric? It's funny because they're not even saying like Mr. Adams or Mr. Mayor. They're just like Eric. They're hitting him with the Eric.
The subway system to bring down crime. All of these initiatives that I do around public safety, it's a constant fight with them because I think many people are articulating their personal reasons and not the feeling that the city has. 78% of New Yorkers stand with me, stand with what Tom is doing about getting these dangerous individuals.
But the
off our
problem
streets.
is we don't know they're dangerous till they kill. Like that guy that put this woman on fire because she fell asleep in the...
The problem is we don't know if they're dangerous until they kill, which is why we have to deport all migrants, is an insane thing to say. But that is now the official line. Like that is... The problem is we don't know if all white men, white boys, white teenagers going to school are going to become school shooters. So what we have to do is eliminate white boys in school would be a ridiculous thing to say. Overwhelming majority of violent crimes are done by men. We don't know if the next man you encounter is going to be a violent one, so we have to pre-fire and kill all men would be a ridiculous fucking argument. So why would you make that argument about undocumented migrants that come from literally, and just not undocumented. I'm not even going to say undocumented migrants anymore, because it's also documented migrants too. They come from all different walks of life, from every other part of the fucking planet. And these guys think that they are a monolithic force of evil, despite the fact that data shows the exact opposite.
The subway. He didn't have a criminal, he didn't have a record, but when after he lit up the women on fire, now he's a problem. He didn't belong here. Same thing with Laken Riley's killer.
Yeah, dumbass, that's how fucking, what do you mean? That's how the law works, dude. What the fuck? Like, why can't we do enforcement before someone is guilty of a crime is an insane statement. Like, he's just literally saying, why can't we be fucking racist and deport everyone guilty without trial so that we can lower the crime rate? Even though if they did that, that wouldn't actually lower the crime rate, because they're not responsible for a larger share of crimes. These guys hyper focus on a minuscule sliver of crime and then turn around and fucking claim that like everyone is doing it. My entire family's first-gen immigrants. Not everyone was able to come legally right away, but they've always been hardworking people. To have that idea imposed onto an entire group is just dangerous. It is so dangerous. It is full-blown Nazi shit. Talking with your mouth full makes you sound like Tom Homan. Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Maybe the dumbass Republicans that come in here will like me better if I sound like a fucking stroke victim who's really drunk as well. Like,
who was housed here, went to Georgia and killed. So even though you say, well, we want to be open to people, we don't know these guys are criminals until they act, and then it's too late. Then they become a problem.
Well,
but if they never got here, there wouldn't be a problem.
And that's what's good about what we're doing right now, what Tom, the border czar, has done. I've said it over and over again. We need to control our borders and not allow people to come into the country, gang members coming into the country, people who are here to commit crime. I think what we've witnessed the border czar has done, we have seen a substantial decrease in that flow.
Tom, you know the NYPD. How frustrated are they that they can't fully have your back, be able to tell them exactly where these guys are, be able to go into these raids with you?
Oh, they were frustrated. I mean, the NYPD wants to protect their streets too, and they want to enforce the law, and they want to collaborate with us. I mean, I don't think I met a single uniform in the 4 years I've been coming to the studio that sit out front. I shake everyone their hands. We had dinner with officers last night, not only from NYPD. We had dinner with officers from Newark and from Philadelphia. We had a whole table full of officers that want to do the right thing. They want to collaborate with us. But
they're so horny for violence. They're like, come on, we're fantasizing about it. They're fucking fire. Wow, they really want to do enforcement. They really want to do Gestapo stuff, but it's just crazy because, like, the woke police don't let them do it.
I think yesterday's meeting, I came to New York City, I wasn't going to leave out nothing.
Right.
I did the last time, and I told them I'm not leaving until I got something. And so we're back into Rikers, that's huge, but we got other things we're working on, so I'm hoping, and now I got him on the couch in front of me.
He's like, yeah, I'm going to make this motherfucker also let me into the schools. That's what I'm going to do, because I want that. That's where the undocumented migrants are.
It's the people, he can't back waving this now, right? So I think you're going to see things move in the right direction. I really, truly believe that.
And we don't want to give the false impression that there's no collaboration around criminal justice. We collaborated with ICE to take down a very dangerous gang member who was trying to put grenades in our city, caught with a gun. So there's real collaboration with HIDA, our criminal justice apparatus on the city, state, and federal level.
Wait a minute. So when someone actually is doing like what amounts to an act of terror, let's say he's not lying. Okay? So it feels like there is a justifiable level of violence that allows local law enforcement to actively collaborate with the federal law enforcement agencies. So what is Tom Homan looking for, really? Yeah, no shit. If an undocumented migrant that is also a gang member is putting fucking grenades in New York City, then there is going to be an active investigation that requires federal law enforcement, the ATF, and numerous other agencies to cooperate with one another, Chad. My point is, this is how it fucking has always worked. Okay? That's not what Tom Homan wants. He wants to go into the schools. That's what he wants. People, I don't think, understand. They are talking about hyper-specific edge cases that certainly exist in every society where there is already active law enforcement collaboration within federal agencies. They're pointing to that as though there was no previous enforcement of such things and no previous collaboration, while simultaneously admitting that there was previous collaboration, okay, to justify doing dragnets. Assume a position that is defensible to do the indefensible. Lying. That's it. That's what they're doing. They're lying when they say, oh, well, there are really violent, unimaginably violent criminals out there that require enforcement. And then when they give an example, you're like, oh, yeah, of course that person needs to be fucking prosecuted. Like, what are we talking about? But in practice, what they're doing is greatly extending the protocols of deportation to people that aren't doing any of those things. People are just like living their daily, regular ass lives.
We want ICE to come and be a part of that meeting as well.
Well, Mayor, let's talk a little bit about, you've been in the news all week.
Yes.
The Department of Justice dropped the criminal corruption charges against you. The U.S. attorney here in New York City, the Southern District, she quit yesterday, the acting U.S. attorney. And so did 5 members of the Department of Justice because they felt like being forced by the Department of Justice to drop the corruption charges was inappropriate and they should not have asked. And what she said was, you offered to help with the migration problem and the immigration agenda in exchange for the case being dropped.
Think about that. Think about that. Think about my attorney, Alex Spira, one of the top trial attorneys in the country. Imagine him going inside saying that the only way Mayor Adams is going to assist in immigration, which I was calling for since 2022, right, is if you drop the charges. That's quid pro quo. That's a crime.
Why is he walking us through the steps of what happened? We don't have to imagine it. Why are you making us imagine it again? That is literally what happened. It's weird that he is demanding you close your eyes and imagine exactly what happened. But if you listen to him, he's implying that that is not what happened. But since it is what happened, it's almost like he's saying, look, I got away with it. Just close your eyes and imagine how stupid you must be to let me get away with it. He's doing a literal if I did it style book release right here. Like he's fucking OJ Simpson. You know? He's pulling a OJ. That's crazy.
Crime.
That
It
is
took her
quid pro quo.
it took her 3 weeks to report in front of her a criminal action. Right. Come on, this is silly.
So,
Did- right after-
they said that we're not saying. They said when they gave you when they dropped the charges, it says it's not because we think he's innocent. It says we think that it affects elections. It's going to affect his re-election, and we think that that was wrong.
I'm sorry, who said
When
that?
the Department of Justice dropped the charges, they said it's not because they think the charges were unjust or that you're innocent, but they were doing it because with the charges they feel affected an election.
No, go deeper into what they wrote. They articulated exactly weaponization. When you looked at legroom turning into bribery because I asked for a governmental entity to do a building.
Wait, now he's just explaining the details of how he did his quid pro quo. Wait, what the fuck? Why is he explaining? Okay, dude. What is happening right now? He's just basically describing why he was popped. Oh, it's just leg room for, allowing the Turkish embassy to not go through fire safety inspection. Like, who cares?
Inspection. We need to be clear on the root of all of this. And the
Turkish embassy.
Exactly. The main justice. I learned so much through this whole process. They review cases to determine moving forward or not, as my attorney articulated.
But
so
part
when you look at the heart of what I was being charged with as the mayor, I was the borough president at the time, not say pass someone. Can you do an inspection?
Tom, you're friends with the president, obviously. You came out of retirement, twice to go work for him and not making nearly as much money. Hope your wife's okay with that. But we appreciate you because you're fighting for this country and keep it up. But you talked to the president. The president was asked if this was quid pro quo, if he had anything to do with it, and he said he didn't.
No, I believe the president. And look, the president's doing a great job. And I want to say this. Look, I worked for 6 presidents. I think President Trump's the greatest president in my lifetime. And he proves it every day. Every day he proves to me.
Obama give this guy a medal. President Barack Obama, I repeat. President Barack Obama gave this fucking demon a goddamn medal. Open your mouth when you speak, you fat ogre fuck. I can't tell if you're talking to me or Tom Homan. But I will tell you that I'm trying to be more like him. I'm trying to be more like him so that Republicans like me more.
Why he is the greatest president of my lifetime. Border numbers are down over 90% in 3 weeks.
Think about that.
And you know, I worked hard at it. You know, Kristi Noem's working hard at it. You know, the border, the chief of patrol agent working hard at it. But it was President Trump's executive orders that was a game changer, right? And we already got over almost 16,000 people we arrested in the interior. That's 3 times more than Joe Biden had a year from now. But it's not enough. We got to do more. But President Trump's leadership, when you get 90% less people coming across the border, how many women aren't being raped by the cartels? How many children aren't drowning? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked in this country? President Trump's a game changer, and every day I'll say it 100 times. Every day he proves to me why he's the greatest president of my lifetime. What he's done.
And you know, Tom, one of the reasons, in addition to not interfering with your election coming up, one of the other things was they needed you to essentially assist Tom with the migration problem here in New York City.
And what does that look like?
When our beautiful ICE agents are running around arresting otherwise law-abiding abuelas, they have their hands filled with trying to do detentions for otherwise law-abiding citizens. So they don't have enough time to do rapes. This is how we're lowering the instances of sexual assault. For every ICE agent that arrests and detains and does paperwork for arresting a 15-year-old Guatemalan, that ICE agent is not doing a rape in the interior. That ICE agent is too busy doing paperwork, so he can't beat his wife. This is how we're saving the nation.
But people didn't understand what that looks like. What that looks like, as I say, every morning we meet with hideouts.
Right.
Federal, state, and city law enforcement agencies.
Which we now have a seat at the table on.
Exactly.
Well,
right. That was another thing we
But
both
that's
agreed.
good, and that's good because, as you know, Mayor, the way this particular case is being handled right now, they can refile the charges at any time. If you don't help them, they could refile the charges. And
That's not what they said. That's not what that's
they can refile the charges.
No.
Right?
First of all, I don't get into the legalese. I have an attorney to do that, and I pay a lot for that. What we need to be clear on, if the mayor of the city of New York is unable to collaborate, deal with intelligence information, sit down with my state and federal agencies and sit down to coordinate for public safety, we're still under the terrorist threat.
What are you talking about? Then the normal process is you're supposed to resign in disgrace. Yeah. That's the point. Yes, if you are a criminal and you've done a crime and they caught you dead to rights, under normal circumstances, there should be some mechanism or at least like some kind of personal interest in self-preservation where you go, okay, I got in the interest of the greater public good. I am no longer going to do this job anymore. He's like, oh, well, I can't do my job if like I'm considered a criminal. Yeah, well, then don't do the fucking corruption. Like, what do you mean? Like, does New York fall apart without this man running the fucking city? Is that what it is? He's like, you don't understand. No one else can be mayor of this city. Anyway, great
We still
stuff.
having illegal gangs in our community that's bringing about destruction that ICE is attempting to weed out. If I can't coordinate that, that's a public safety issue, and we should put public safety first.
Governor Hochul said last night with Rachel Maddow that she would consider removing you. How would you feel about that?
She has her role, I have my role. And throughout this entire ordeal, which I think no American should have to go through, the torment of 15 months that my family and I had to endure for something I didn't do. I didn't do anything wrong. Throughout the entire ordeal, I said one thing. My attorney will handle the legal part. I'm going to handle running the city. We return jobs to our city. Our city is getting safer. We're building housing. I think that this is a great American narrative.